Welcome into Humble Boldness. My name is Kevin, Pastor Kevin, or PK, as some of you guys know me. I'm a pastor on the south side of Des Moines. If you found this channel through the internet, or if you're from Lighthouse Community Church, where I pastor, welcome. Glad to have you here. Unfortunately, this is take 2 for this episode. I'm doing this recording right now on a Tuesday morning. I had done this episode last week, was happy about it. When I went back and listened to it, the audio didn't sound good. As I'm sure many podcasters and new podcasters like myself have had that issue and things before where things just don't go the way you want them to with technology or things like that. But hey, here I am again doing this. It's been a little while since I've been regular with this podcast. Hoping to do it once a week. But just to kind of give you an update on life. Life has been pretty good and steady right now. It's January 2025. Home life. We've been busy with my oldest is doing basketball and some wrestling. So he's been busy with doing those things. I've really enjoyed watching him wrestle. It's been a fun thing for me to cheer him on and encourage him with that. He's been doing a tournament team basketball and school ball. Like last night, he had 3 practices in a row. It's a lot. I think Adrian likes to watch him play basketball. I like to watch him play wrestling a little more. We'll see where it goes in his sports career going forward. Both my oldest then went to a retreat this last weekend, Winter Blast. I used to take students there when I was in Missouri as a youth pastor. Great weekend. I'm glad they got to go to it. My youngest, he's doing good. No activities for him right now at home, but yeah, family life is going well. In terms of the church, we are preaching through the book of Ezekiel right now. I've never done a major prophet. I've never done Ezekiel. So we're doing a 6-week sermon series on this. So not every verse. 1 week I did like 23 chapters combined, looking at how Ezekiel calls out the leaders in Jerusalem and Israel. And I found it to be a really good challenge. I found it to be just a really interesting book to study through. I think it's got some real meaning for today in terms of how he calls out people and injustice, and just to see God's glory. This last Sunday I preached about the 2 verses in Ezekiel 36 about the new heart. So we'll look at the valley of dry bones the next time, and then the end of the book, the new temple, the new home that Ezekiel looks forward to. And the church has just been moving and grooving. We had some really cold, snowy, icy days in January, which is too bad. We had to cancel church one Sunday, and I think it was December. We had a really cold Sunday where a lot of people stayed home, which happens. But I've been encouraged by the church. I'm excited for this year because it's our 25th anniversary as a church. And we have a lot of history as a church, 25 years in this area. And we've, over the years, had some stuff in our history that hasn't gone so well, or we haven't done a really good job at. Past leaders made decisions that were hard. So we want to acknowledge that too as a church, but also just be thankful for how God has been faithful and bearing fruit in the midst of our broken world. So we're going to celebrate some things like that as a church. For the episode today, I'm going to kind of combine a few different things that I've been listening to, watching, a love of mine, the Bears. So I made up a kind of crazy title, Telepathic Bears in Severance, combine these 3 topics. And you might be thinking, why explore these topics? Well, for me as a pastor, as a Christian, I'm always watching, listening, things with an eye toward Christianity or the Bible, and how does it match up? How does it affect me, my emotions, my relationship with God? And so I'm going to touch on those each one of these topics here. The first thing I want to talk about is a podcast I started listening to called the Telepathy Tapes. I don't know if you're podcast listeners or if you've seen this around, but it was number one in podcasts over the holidays. I think it even beat out Joe Rogan for a time. As I looked at this last week, it was the number one Apple Podcast series last week. So it still has a lot of attention on it. And the Telepathy Tapes, it's an interviewer or investigator, Kai Dickens, who does these interviews with parents and teachers and children who are autistic, mostly autistic children or teenagers, young adults, who seem to display telepathic powers or tendencies. And so her whole thing is investigating whether it is true or not. Do these nonverbal speakers who have extreme autism in many cases use telepathy? And as I started listening to it, I tried to go in with some skepticism to figure out, is this just kind of a fun fake story, a fake investigation? As we have things like The Office or deep fakes to AI seem real, and from what I can tell, it's not faked, at least in the sense of like AI or that kind of thing. I'm not finding a lot of that just online, but who knows? I'm kind of still going with some skepticism. But I found it really interesting to kind of hear some of the stories. She does a really good job of going from story to story, from person to person, with different families or kids, hearing what they do. And they would do different tests with a child who was a non-speaker, who maybe was in a different room than the parent. They would show the parent an Uno card, and then the child in a different room would spell out what the Uno card said, or they would think something, write it down, and the child in the room would say it or do it on this spelling board, I think it's called, letter board. So all kinds of experiments like that. And as the series goes on, I think I'm maybe 6-7 episodes into it, it gets broader and broader and beyond just telepathy. And she talks about how she finds a lot of resistance to this idea from materialists. Somebody who looks at the world from just a purely physical science perspective, that there's no spiritual world or things like this. And she does bring in some Christians too, Christian family. One family was just, a really neat story, I think, of a woman who was just broken because her son was just very hard to deal with and not able to speak with him, and was kind of just at her ending point, and God did some miraculous things and was able to eventually find ways to communicate with her son, and what she feels like is a spiritual gift of being telepathic. It still kind of sounds funny in my head to think about that and to say if that's real or not. I never experienced that. I don't have much contact with people that are autistic or kids. So still going into with some skepticism. I think in the Bible you do have people that have visions. They experience God in different ways. I mean, just reading Ezekiel right now, you've got this experience that he has where he's transported to different areas. He sees these amazing spiritual beings, and God talks to him. And sometimes it's hard to tell in the Bible, does God speak audibly, in our head, something different? There's just a whole dimension to the spiritual world that I believe in that we don't always have access to or can hear God working and speaking and doing things. Sometimes we can. I wrote a book last year, I think I did a podcast on it too, called Imagine the God of Heaven, where a Christian who does research on people that have near-death experiences, and a lot of them talk about in these near-death experiences being able to speak with beings or people or God in a telepathic type way. Yeah, interesting. As I've listened to kind of more of the later episodes in this, it kind of goes, as I said, much broader into, I mean, do animals have telepathy, consciousness, some other kind of dimension? So it's interesting for me to see like somebody who's maybe curious try to go down this road of how do we figure this stuff out? Is there something else out there besides what our eyes can see? So I like that. I like that about this, to kind of just see, it piques my interest, my curiosity. I would love to hear from other Christians what you think about this, or if you're not a Christian, what you think about this. It's just been, as I've seen it kind of capture the imagination of people on listening to podcasts, that's been very popular. Well, topic 2 is the Chicago Bears. You may not be a big sports fan or a Bears fan. That's fine. I want to talk about the last sports Bears year for me and take you on this journey that I've been on, because for me, it's a hobby, but it's also a kind of lesson and a thing for me about how do I listen to my emotions, a hobby that has ups and downs I can't control, and how do I do it. And I just think it's an interesting story too. So the Bears this year was the most crazy, wild, up and down, worst season that I've been a part of. I've watched the Bears now for years, and these last number of years have just felt like a drought, and really hard to watch this last year especially. I mean, even just thinking back to January of 2024, like the year of 2024 begins with this terrible loss, ending the last season with a loss to the Packers, a rival, losing in just a terrible way. Soon after that, the season ends. We fire our offensive coordinator. We hire this new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. So there's some hype to that. We then in March acquire a new guy, Keenan Allen. He's a really great wide receiver, a veteran, going to add some depth. Soon after that, we deal away our quarterback, Justin Fields, for a 6th-round draft pick, and then the draft in April. We draft number 1 overall. I've never seen the Bears do that, to draft number 1 overall. Caleb Williams, and they draft a wide receiver at number 9, Rome Odunze, and just seems like everything is kind of trending up at that point. And so I kind of decide, okay, let's have some fun this year with the Bears, and if they're trending up, maybe let's kind of go a little more all in. So we decide to go to a training camp. We'd be in Chicago area for my parents' anniversary. There was a joint practice going on. We went to Bears training camp. Lots of fun. It was cool to kind of just be there and be at the field, and it's free to get some autographs. And then they were on Hard Knocks. Never watched Hard Knocks before, but fun to kind of see behind the scenes, see some of the training camp stuff that we were at. What I love about this hobby for me is it's more than just watching a game. It's like getting to know the players and the coaches. I pray for them as people, as Christians, and so it's more than just kind of wins and losses. It's kind of become more of just podcasts and things I listen to. And then they had the preseason where they were the first preseason game, inducted 3 different Bears into the Hall of Fame. And we decided, let's go to a Bears game this year. I haven't been to a Bears game in years. So we picked a late season game in Minnesota, thinking, oh, probably the Bears will have a better year and Minnesota will have a down year. And as the season started, we went 4-2. It was a great start. There were some ups and downs, for sure. We had some great wins, some large wins toward the end of that, kind of 4-2. And then in October, it just all started to burn and crash. So you can see this kind of up, 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 and it goes down real quick and real far. There was the Washington Commanders game where we lose on a last-minute Hail Mary pass. It happens. But then one of our guys is in the end zone. He's like taunting the fans around him as the play is going on. He's the one that tips the ball to get the interception in the end. And then we just start losing terribly. Scored 3 points against the Cardinals, lose to the Patriots, and we fire our offensive coordinator that we just got. In November, then, we play the Packers, and we have a chance to beat them, which we haven't done in so many years. Last minute, kick a field goal, and it is blocked right at the very end. Then we play the Vikings, and I wrote this down. In the last 30 seconds, the Bears scored a touchdown, a 2-point conversion. They get an onside kick a field goal to go into overtime, all to tie it. Then they lose in overtime. And then at Thanksgiving, they had this terrible loss of terrible time management. Again, could have kind of at least kicked a field goal to win, I think, or tie, and then they fire the head coach. Just lots of losing. And after the head coach is fired, it just keeps getting worse and worse. We got to go in December to the Bears-Vikings game. The Bears lost, of course, but super fun to go to. Really cool stadium, US Bank Stadium. Really enjoy that just whole experience. I had an opportunity to go to another game when we were back in Chicago for Christmas. They were playing Seattle. It's kind of a rainy, cloudy night, and I'm so glad I didn't go because they lost like 6-3, and there were so many punts. I don't know, like 10 games in a row we lost, and finally the last game of the season we won by beating the Packers, and then in January we hire Ben Johnson, like the coach that everybody in the NFL wanted and thought was going to be the next best coach. We'll see if he is or not. But I made a podcast at the beginning of the Bears season of like kind of the excitement and hype and talking about maybe how I would do with my emotions and up and down with the Bears, and having a 10-game losing streak or however long it was difficult, and for sure I didn't do as well sometimes with my podcast listening because they just want to hype you up, whether it's good or bad, and make you angry or emotional, and so I'm happy this season is over for the Bears. It's better for my mental health sometimes, but just a crazy year, and excited for the off season. Some things that will come with that. Last topic today that I'm going to talk about is a TV show called Severance. This is a show that I kind of been hearing some hype or talk about because season 2 was coming out. Season 1 happened a couple of years ago, and I never watched it. It was on Apple TV, so didn't really pay much attention to it. And so I one night was just kind of, I think, bored and looking for something to watch, and pulled this up and started watching it. Not a whole lot of knowledge going into it of what it was about. And the basic premise of the show is that a company creates some technology to sever your home life from your work life, so that you can go to work and not remember anything, emotions or background or who you are at work, get your work done. You can go home and not having the stress or emotions of your work at home. So interesting kind of like sci-fi, element to it of this idea. And I got to say, the first 2, 3, 4 episodes, I was just kind of confused. It's strange. I asked around a few people I knew, like, have you watched this? Do you like this? I had one friend who had loved it. I'm like, okay, I'll keep going. So I stuck it out to the end of the season, and I ended up loving it by the end. Some of its quirkiness, it's quirky, it's kind of goofy, but you kind of understand by the end a little bit why it's kind of quirky and goofy. They explain some things. I love that about a TV show. If it's like shrouded in mystery and it kind of slowly gives you some breadcrumbs of something bigger is going on. It reminded me of the show Lost. I loved watching that too. Both of these shows have just some really cool, background scenery they do, where Lost had, a desert island, and this has a very stark office building, white space with colors of green, blue, red. They really utilize music and colors and things like that really well. But as I'm watching this TV show too, there's a lot of spiritual elements to it. There is a book or a number of books that a lot of people memorize. They follow religiously. They see as kind of the book of the law or rules that everyone must adhere to. There's worship that goes on at some points, worship to a leader, to an organization. There's like a song that's sung one time. And even just like consequences to breaking the rules, or just this kind of, people following something with faith. They don't quite know all the answers to. It did remind me a lot of like some Mormonism. A lot of the technology or images, like paintings, or they have like wax figures, are like older, like from 1900s, 1800s, with kind of just these blind followers following a blind or a person from older times. Just a lot of like similar imagery to like you walk into a Mormon church of people from the 1800s, or Joseph Smith, or things like that, or this kind of rule following type thing. But it made me kind of think of too, like, is this how the director or maybe our culture views Christianity or religion? That really its only purpose is to subjugate people, to get them to follow and do what you want. That there's really no substance behind it, maybe, that it's shrouded in mystery for maybe nefarious purposes even. It's about control. It's about manipulation. It's kind of stiff. Is that what our culture or religion thinks about, or the director thinks about religion or Christianity? Sometimes too, like these shows I watch or music, it can affect kind of how I think about my own relationship. And so as I was reading my Bible and watching this show, it made me think about, like, am I just reading this book, this Bible, because somebody told me to, or it's a book of rules from 3,000 years ago? Am I just in a stiff religion? And it made me think about kind of just the importance of a relationship, that it's more than just a relationship. It's more than just a religion, but it's a relationship with God. And so that was a good challenge for me to think through and to test my own devotional time and thinking and thought process and all that. It's a little taste of me, a little taste of what I've been listening to, watching, along with a number of things lately too. And maybe this week I'll get back to another thing that I've been watching, listening to. I've been playing around with, do I go back to the book of Habakkuk? I've kind of stopped at one point. It's a difficult one, I think, because it talks about injustice and calling out unjust things around the world. And it's a struggle for me sometimes how to do that as a pastor in our world and culture today. But anyways, that's me. Love you guys. Hope you are doing well. Hope you're blessed. And we'll see you later. Bye.